My name is Talia, and at 34, I never imagined I would be rebuilding my life from the ashes of betrayal. As a high school guidance counselor, I've always believed education is the key to a secure future. But nothing prepared me for the day I discovered my husband had drained our daughter's college fund to start a new life with his mistress. I was shattered until our 12-year-old looked at me with a confident smirk and said, "Mom, don't worry, I handled it." Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me your location. Let's connect as I share how my brilliant daughter saved our future. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Pennsylvania, the daughter of factory workers who never had the chance to attend college themselves. My parents instilled in me the value of education from an early age, saving every spare penny to ensure I could be the first in our family to earn a college degree. Their sacrifice made a profound impression on me, shaping my belief that providing educational opportunities is one of the greatest gifts parents can give their children. I met James during my sophomore year at Penn State. He was studying finance, and I was pursuing education with dreams of becoming a teacher. We literally bumped into each other at the library one night when I was carrying a stack of textbooks too tall to see over. He helped me gather my scattered books, and we ended up talking until the library closed. James was charming, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in my passion for education. Our relationship progressed quickly, and by senior year we were engaged. After graduation, James landed a position at a financial advisory firm, while I began teaching at a local high school. We married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and friends, bought a modest starter home, and started planning our future together. 2 years into our marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. We were overjoyed at the prospect of becoming parents. Our daughter Zoe arrived on a snowy January morning, perfect in every way with her father's blue eyes and my dark curls. From the beginning, she showed signs of remarkable intelligence. She spoke in complete sentences by 18 months, could read simple books by age 3, and was solving basic algebra problems by the time she started elementary school. Her teachers frequently commented on her exceptional abilities, suggesting we provide additional enrichment activities to keep her engaged. As Zoe grew, James's career flourished. He developed a reputation for helping clients build solid investment portfolios, and his income steadily increased. I eventually transitioned from classroom teaching to become a guidance counselor, finding fulfillment in helping students navigate the complicated process of college applications and financial aid. I especially enjoyed working with first-generation college students whose families, like mine, had limited knowledge of the system. Our family dynamic seemed perfect on the surface. James handled our finances, making investment decisions, and planning for our future security. I managed most of the day-to-day parenting responsibilities, helping with homework, attending parent-teacher conferences, and coordinating Zoe's increasingly busy schedule of activities. We complemented each other well, or so I thought. When Zoe was just a few weeks old, James and I established a 529 college savings plan. "Our daughter is going to have every opportunity," James said as he completed the paperwork. "She'll never have to worry about student loans like we did." We committed to making regular contributions, and James set up automatic monthly transfers from our joint account. Additionally, we established family traditions around building Zoe's educational future. On her birthdays, instead of asking for toys, we encouraged relatives to make small contributions to her college fund. Each Christmas, we would add our own year-end bonus to the growing nest egg. Every quarter, James would share statements showing the growth of Zoe's fund, explaining to her in age-appropriate terms how compound interest was working in her favor. "By the time you're ready for college," he would tell her, you'll be able to attend any school you get into without financial stress." Zoe would beam with pride, already talking about Harvard, Stanford, and MIT, despite being years away from high school. In retrospect, there were early warning signs of trouble that I chose to ignore. James began working increasingly late hours when Zoe was around 10. His business trips became more frequent, often extended at the last minute for important client meetings. He started keeping his phone face down and password protected, something he had never done before. But between my demanding job and managing Zoe's busy schedule of advanced classes and extracurricular activities, I pushed aside my concerns, telling myself that James was simply working hard to provide for our family. Zoe and I developed a special bond during these years, often spending evenings discussing her future dreams while James worked late. She was fascinated by computer programming and had already created several simple apps under the guidance of her technology teacher. "When I grow up," she would tell me, "I want to create systems that help people protect their information." Little did I know how prophetic those childhood ambitions would become. The first concrete hint that something was wrong came on a rainy Tuesday in April. I was using James's laptop to print some documents for work when a text message notification popped up on the screen. "Miss you already. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." The sender was saved as AM Consulting, but the message was distinctly personal. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach, but I clicked away, telling myself it must be some kind of mistake or an inside joke with a colleague. That evening, I casually mentioned to James that I had used his laptop. His reaction was immediate and disproportionate. "You should have asked first," he snapped, checking the browser history and message notifications with obvious anxiety. When I asked about the text, he laughed it off unconvincingly. "That's just Amanda from the marketing department. We're working on a big client presentation together." The explanation seemed plausible, but something in his demeanor made me uneasy. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more changes in James's behavior. He bought new, more stylish clothes. He started going to the gym regularly after years of claiming he was too busy for regular exercise. He became protective of his phone, taking it with him even for short trips to the bathroom. Passwords appeared on accounts that had previously been accessible to both of us. When I tried to discuss these changes, James dismissed my concerns. "You're being paranoid, Talia," he said with an edge to his voice I'd never heard before. "I'm under a lot of pressure at work, and you're not making it any easier with these accusations." His words made me question myself. Was I overreacting? Was the stress of my own job causing me to imagine problems in our marriage? The confirmation of my fears came from an unexpected source. One evening, while helping Zoe with her science project, she mentioned seeing her father at Luigi's, an upscale Italian restaurant across town. "Dad was with a pretty lady friend when I was there for Emma's birthday lunch last Saturday," she said casually. "I waved, but he didn't see me." My heart dropped. James had told me he was meeting clients in Philadelphia that day, a 2-hour drive away. "Did you recognize the woman?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "No," Zoe replied, focused on her project. "She had really long blonde hair and laughed really loud. Dad was holding her hand on the table." I spent that night tossing and turning, torn between confronting James and protecting Zoe from potential fallout. The next morning, I tried to have an honest conversation with him. "Is there something going on that we need to discuss?" I asked as he hurriedly prepared for work. "Zoe mentioned seeing you at Luigi's on Saturday." James's face flushed with anger. "You're using our daughter to spy on me now. That's a new low, Talia." The argument escalated quickly, with James storming out without addressing the restaurant sighting. That evening, he didn't come home until after Zoe was asleep, claiming a last-minute client emergency. In the weeks that followed, James became increasingly controlling about our finances. He removed my access to our investment accounts, claiming the financial firm had implemented new security protocols. My credit card was suddenly declined while grocery shopping, and when I called James about it, he explained it away as a fraud alert that he would resolve. He began questioning routine household purchases and suggesting we needed to tighten our belts, despite his supposedly thriving career. Worried and confused, I confided in my best friend Sarah over coffee. "Something's not right, but I can't put all the pieces together," I admitted. "Part of me is afraid to know the truth." Sarah squeezed my hand sympathetically. "I hate to say this, but you need to do some investigating. For your sake and for Zoe's." With Sarah's encouragement, I began looking for concrete evidence. While James was showering one morning, I checked his wallet and found receipts for jewelry stores and hotels in Philadelphia purchases he had never mentioned. I also discovered a second phone charger in his car that wasn't compatible with his iPhone. When I finally worked up the courage to check our credit card statements online, I found charges for women's clothing, expensive dinners on nights he claimed to be working late, and a weekend at a luxury resort when he had told me he was attending a financial conference. Meanwhile, Zoe began sharing more observations. "I think the lady's name is Amanda," she told me one afternoon while we were baking cookies. "Dad's phone rang when he was driving me to coding class last week, and that name popped up. He ignored the call and seemed upset that I saw it." Amanda, the same name he had casually mentioned as his marketing colleague. The pieces were starting to fit together, and the picture they formed was devastating. Yet even as my emotional world began to crumble, I was amazed by Zoe's perceptiveness and worried about how this situation might affect her. My anxiety wasn't just about the potential affair anymore. With James restricting my access to our accounts and making comments about financial tightening, I began to worry about our financial stability. Had he made poor investment decisions he wasn't telling me about? Was he spending our savings on this woman? What would this mean for Zoe's future and the college fund we had so carefully built? One night after James had again failed to come home for dinner, Zoe found me crying in the kitchen. With wisdom beyond her 12 years, she sat beside me and leaned her head on my shoulder. "It's going to be okay, Mom," she said with surprising conviction. "People who lie always make mistakes eventually." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place on a Thursday morning in May. With growing concerns about our financial situation, I decided to check on Zoe's college fund, something I hadn't done personally in months, since James always handled the quarterly updates. When I attempted to log into the account using the credentials we had established years ago, the system returned an error message, "Username or password incorrect." After several failed attempts, I called the financial institution directly. "I'm trying to access my daughter's 529 plan," I explained to the representative, "but it seems the login information has changed." "Let me verify your identity and check on that account for you," the representative replied. After answering several security questions, I waited anxiously as she reviewed the account. "I see the issue," she finally said. "The account ownership was changed approximately 6 months ago. You're no longer listed as an authorized user." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible. This is a college fund for my daughter, who is listed as the owner. I can only see that the primary account holder is James Wilson. For any other information, you would need to speak with him directly, as we can't share additional details without his authorization." I thanked her mechanically and ended the call, my mind racing. Why would James remove me from Zoe's college account? With trembling hands, I texted him, "We need to talk about Zoe's college fund. Tonight. No excuses." For once, James came home at a reasonable hour. He found me sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea gone cold in front of me. "What's this urgent discussion about Zoe's account?" He asked, his tone casual, but his eyes wary. "Why did you remove me from the account 6 months ago?" I asked directly, watching his face. A flicker of surprise crossed his features before his expression hardened. "I've been meaning to talk to you about this," he said, sitting down across from me. "I've had to make some adjustments to our financial strategy." "What kind of adjustments involve cutting me off from our daughter's education fund?" James sighed, a sound of irritation rather than regret. "Look, Talia, there's no easy way to say this. I've met someone else. Amanda and I have been seeing each other for about a year, and we've decided to build a life together." Though I had suspected the affair, hearing the confirmation still felt like a physical blow. "You're leaving us for the marketing consultant," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "She's actually a client, not marketing," James corrected, as if that detail mattered. "And yes, I'm moving out this weekend. I was going to tell you after finalizing some arrangements." I struggled to process this information, my mind fixating on practical concerns amidst the emotional devastation. "What about Zoe's college fund? Why would you need to remove me from that account?" James's expression grew colder, more distant. "Amanda and I need a fresh start. Setting up a new life isn't cheap." The implication of his words hit me like a tidal wave. "Are you saying you've been using Zoe's college money to finance your affair?" He didn't deny it. "Zoe is brilliant. She'll get scholarships. Amanda and I deserve happiness, and that requires financial freedom." I stared at my husband of 14 years, suddenly seeing a stranger. His handsome face showed no remorse, only impatience to be done with this conversation. His blue eyes, once warm when looking at me, now held the calculating gaze of someone who had reduced our family to a balance sheet of assets and liabilities. "How much?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. "How much of her future have you stolen?" "I wouldn't call it stealing," James replied defensively. "Those funds were established by both of us, and as a financial professional, I made a reallocation decision." "How much?" I repeated through clenched teeth. "About 90,000, he finally admitted. "But like I said, we can rebuild it over time, or she can apply for scholarships and student loans. Plenty of kids do that." The room seemed to spin around me. $90,000. Nearly a decade of careful saving, birthday contributions, Christmas bonuses, all gone to fund his new life with Amanda. I thought of Zoe's dreams of attending an elite university, her excitement every time we discussed her educational future, her trust in us to provide that foundation. "You're going to replace every penny," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I don't care what you have to sell or how many extra hours you have to work. That money wasn't yours to take." James stood, straightening his expensive new watch, likely another purchase made with our daughter's future. "I'll sort things out later, but I'm not making promises I can't keep. Amanda and I are planning to relocate to California next month. I'll be in touch about divorce proceedings." He walked out of the kitchen toward our bedroom, presumably to pack his things. I sat frozen at the table, overwhelmed by shock, betrayal, and mounting panic about the future. How would I tell Zoe that not only was her father leaving us, but he had also stolen the money meant for her education? How would I rebuild that fund as a single mother on a guidance counselor's salary? Lost in these thoughts, I didn't notice Zoe standing in the hallway until she darted past the kitchen toward her room. My heart sank, realizing she must have overheard at least part of our conversation. I found her at her computer, typing frantically, her face set in intense concentration. "Zoe, honey," I began, not knowing how to explain the catastrophe that had just befallen our family. She glanced up briefly, and I was surprised to see not tears, but determination in her eyes. "Not now, Mom. I need to finish something important." The next morning, I awoke to an empty house. James had packed a suitcase and left sometime during the night, leaving his house key and wedding ring on the kitchen counter. No note, no further explanation, just the cold symbols of his departure. I sat at the table staring at the abandoned ring, feeling the weight of my new reality crash down upon me. For the first time in our married life, I would have to navigate our finances alone. I had no idea what accounts we held, what bills were due, or even how much money we had. James had managed everything, and I had trusted him completely. Now that trust had left me vulnerable and unprepared. After getting Zoe off to school, trying my best to maintain normalcy, despite my red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands, I visited our bank. The personal banker's sympathetic expression told me she had seen this scenario before. "Unfortunately, Mrs. Wilson, the joint checking account currently has a balance of just under $2,000, she explained. The joint savings account was closed last month, and the funds were transferred to an account solely in Mr. Wilson's name. My next stop was a meeting with a lawyer, a woman recommended by Sarah who specialized in divorce cases. "Based on what you've told me, we have grounds to fight for the return of the college fund money," she advised. "However, if he's already spent it, recovery could be difficult. And if he's planning to leave the state, things get more complicated." The consultation fee alone took a significant chunk of the money remaining in our checking account. I left the office with a folder full of papers to complete and a growing sense of dread about the financial battle ahead. The hardest part of that terrible day was preparing to tell Zoe the full truth. How do you explain to a child that the fund carefully built for her future had been drained by the very person who had promised to protect it? As I drove to pick her up from school, I rehearsed various approaches, each feeling inadequate and painful. Zoe climbed into the car, immediately noting my serious expression. "Is this about Dad and the college money?" she asked directly. Taken aback by her forthrightness, I nodded. "Honey, there's something I need to explain about your college fund." "I already know," she interrupted. "I heard you and Dad last night. He took my college money to be with that woman, Amanda." I pulled the car into a parking spot, turning to face my daughter fully. "Yes, and I'm so sorry. I promise I'll do everything possible to rebuild the fund. I might need to take a second job and we'll have to budget carefully, but your education is my priority. We'll figure this out together." What happened next would forever change my understanding of my daughter. Instead of the tears or anger I expected, Zoe gave me a small, confident smile. "Mom, don't worry. I handled it." "What do you mean you handled it?" I asked, confused by her calm demeanor. "I'll explain later," she said suddenly, sounding like a typical 12-year-old again. "Can we get ice cream? I aced my programming test today." Still bewildered but relieved by her apparent resilience, I agreed to the ice cream detour, postponing further questions about her cryptic statement. That evening, as I sorted through household bills trying to establish a budget, I reflected on Zoe's unusual aptitude for technology. From an early age, she had shown an intuitive understanding of computers and programming. By 10, she was taking advanced coding classes at the community college. Her current project involved cybersecurity protocols, something she had become interested in after learning about online banking risks. I remembered how a few years earlier James had proudly shown Zoe how to access her college fund account online. "It's important to understand how to track your investments," he had told her. She had been fascinated by the graphs showing the fund's growth over time, asking insightful questions about interest rates and market fluctuations that had impressed even James. What I hadn't realized was that Zoe had been independently monitoring the account ever since. That night, she showed me folders of screenshots she had saved documenting every transaction in her college fund for the past several years. "I noticed something weird starting 6 months ago," she explained, bringing up a spreadsheet on her computer. "Regular withdrawals always just small enough not to trigger the big drop on the growth chart Dad would show us." The spreadsheet revealed a methodical pattern of withdrawals starting small but increasing over time. James had been careful never taking enough at once to create an obvious decline in the overall balance when factoring in market growth. He had exploited our trust perfectly, knowing neither Zoe nor I would question his quarterly updates. "But how did you access the account after Dad changed the login information?" I asked. Zoe looked slightly uncomfortable. "I may have created a backup access point when I was learning about system vulnerabilities in my coding class. It's not exactly hacking if you're monitoring your own account," she added quickly, seeing my expression. "I just wrote a program that saved the account data regularly, even after Dad changed the passwords." I wasn't sure whether to be impressed by her foresight or concerned about the ethical implications. "And what did you mean when you said you handled it?" A mysterious smile crossed her face. "Let's just say I created an insurance policy a while back. We should hear something in the next few days." Despite my questions, Zoe refused to elaborate further, insisting that it was better if I didn't know the details yet. Too exhausted to press for more information, I let the matter rest, focusing instead on the immediate challenges of adjusting to single parenthood and financial insecurity. The days following James's departure passed in a blur of practical adjustments and emotional processing. I consulted with our bank about securing the remaining funds and applied for a credit card solely in my name. I met with a financial advisor who helped me understand our mortgage situation and develop a preliminary budget. I informed my workplace about my changed circumstances, arranging for additional hours when possible. Throughout this whirlwind of activity, I cycled through waves of grief, anger, and anxiety. Some moments I would find myself crying in the grocery store, staring at items I could no longer afford to purchase. Other times, fury would surge through me at the thought of James and Amanda enjoying the money meant for Zoe's education. Always an undercurrent of worry about our financial future colored every decision and interaction. Zoe surprisingly seemed to be handling the situation better than I was. She went to school, completed her homework, and continued her coding projects with her usual focus. Occasionally, I would catch her checking her phone with unusual interest or typing rapidly on her computer with a look of intense concentration. But when questioned, she would simply say she was monitoring the situation. On the 5th day after James left, I received a text message from him that sent chills down my spine. "Whatever game you and Zoe are playing needs to stop now. Control your daughter before this gets worse for everyone." I stared at the message in confusion, having no idea what he was referring to. When I showed it to Zoe, she merely nodded as if she had expected it. "It's starting," she said cryptically, refusing to elaborate further despite my increasingly frustrated questions. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was preparing breakfast when the doorbell rang insistently. Opening the door, I found myself face to face with a striking blonde woman whose perfect makeup couldn't quite hide her red-rimmed eyes and the tense anger in her expression. "Are you Talia?" she demanded without preamble. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "And you must be Amanda." She pushed past me into the house, her designer handbag swinging wildly. "Where is she? Where's your little computer genius daughter?" I stepped between Amanda and the hallway leading to Zoe's room. My daughter is not available to speak with you. Whatever issue you have, you can discuss it with me. Amanda laughed bitterly. Oh, we have plenty to discuss, like how your family has ruined everything James and I were building. My family, I repeated incredulously. James stole $90,000 from our daughter's college fund to finance your relationship. If anyone's been ruined here, it's Zoe's educational future. Amanda's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose in surprise. Is that what you think happened, that James took the college money for me? She shook her head. James told me he had substantial personal savings and investments. He said he was financially secure and ready for a fresh start. I left my husband based on those promises. Now it was my turn to be shocked. You were married too. 15 years, Amanda confirmed, dropping onto my couch uninvited. I threw it all away because James painted this picture of us living a dream life in California. He was going to start his own financial advisory firm, and I would open a boutique. We had a beachfront condo picked out. Despite my resentment toward this woman, I felt a glimmer of sympathy. She too had been deceived, albeit under different circumstances. So, what changed? I asked, sitting in the chair across from her. Everything, Amanda exclaimed, her composure cracking. 2 days ago, all the money disappeared from our joint account. When I asked James about it, he went ballistic, accusing me of transferring it out. Then he started ranting about his genius daughter and her computer skills. She fixed me with an accusing stare. That's when I realized he wasn't the only one playing games. Your daughter did something, didn't she? The pieces started falling into place, connecting to Zoe's cryptic comments about handling it and creating an insurance policy. I honestly don't know what Zoe might have done, I admitted. But if she did something to recover her stolen college fund, can you really blame her? It wasn't just the college fund money that vanished, Amanda replied, her voice dropping. It was everything. All our accounts, zero balances. James is frantic. He's talking about pressing charges against a 12-year-old for hacking. The severity of the situation suddenly hit me. If Zoe had indeed done something to electronically reclaim funds, she could potentially be in legal trouble regardless of James's original theft. I need to speak with my daughter, I said, standing abruptly. You do that, Amanda agreed, rising as well. And tell her that adults are playing with fire here. James is talking to attorneys today. After showing Amanda out, I hurried to Zoe's room, my mind racing with concerns about possible legal consequences. I found her at her desk, calmly working on what appeared to be homework. Zoe, Amanda was just here. I began, trying to keep my voice steady. She says money has disappeared from their accounts, and James is threatening legal action. I need you to tell me exactly what you did. Zoe slowly closed her textbook and turned to face me. I created a program, she said matter-of-factly. Dad always taught me about equivalent exchange in economics, that funds have to come from somewhere and go somewhere else. So I created a system that ensured equivalent exchange. What does that mean exactly? I asked, a mixture of dread and awe building in my chest. It means that when Dad took from my college fund, my program activated a parallel process. It calculated exactly how much he withdrew over time. Then, when the fund dropped below a certain threshold, it transferred that same amount from his personal accounts back to us. She paused, gauging my reaction. Plus interest. I sat heavily on her bed, stunned by the revelation. Zoe, that sounds like a security measure, she interrupted firmly. Dad always said we should have protections in place for our financial future. I was just following his advice. But accessing someone else's accounts without permission, even if it's your father, could be considered illegal. I explained, trying to make her understand the gravity of the situation. Zoe nodded solemnly. I thought about that. That's why I created a secondary account in your name months ago, one that Dad didn't know about. The program transferred the equivalent funds there instead of directly back to the original college account he controlled. Technically, it's just moving money between his accounts and a joint parental account for my education. I made sure to document everything, every penny he took, and every penny returned. Her foresight was both impressive and concerning. Zoe, this is serious. James is talking about involving the police and attorneys. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang again. Looking out the window, I saw a police cruiser parked in our driveway. My heart sank as I went to answer the door, finding a uniformed officer on our porch. Wilson. I'm Officer Rodriguez. I'm following up on a complaint about potential computer fraud from this address. Is this a good time to talk? With trembling hands, I invited Officer Rodriguez into our living room, my mind racing with how to protect Zoe while still being truthful with law enforcement. The officer was professional but direct, explaining that James had filed a report claiming unauthorized access to his financial accounts originating from our home. My husband and I are in the process of separating, I explained carefully. There's a complicated financial situation involving our daughter's college fund. Officer Rodriguez nodded, taking notes. Mr. Wilson mentioned a college fund dispute. He claims approximately $100,000 was electronically transferred from his accounts without authorization. $100,000. The amount Zoe had recovered was more than I'd realized. Officer, before we continue, I think I should consult with an attorney. This involves a minor and some complex financial history. That's your right, the officer acknowledged. I'm just here for preliminary information gathering at this point. No charges have been filed yet, but I do need to inform you that unauthorized electronic access to financial accounts is a serious matter regardless of the underlying circumstances. After the officer left with my promise to follow up through proper legal channels, I made an emergency call to my divorce attorney, who referred me to a colleague specializing in cybercrime. I secured a same-day consultation, and within hours, Zoe and I were sitting in the office of Anthony Diaz, a former prosecutor turned defense attorney. After hearing our complete story, including Zoe's detailed explanation of her security program, Diaz leaned back in his chair thoughtfully. This is an unusual case, he admitted. On one hand, we have the unauthorized access issue, which technically could fall under computer fraud statutes. On the other hand, we have the original misappropriation of funds designated for Zoe's education by her father, who had fiduciary responsibilities as both a parent and the account manager. Will my daughter face criminal charges? I asked directly, my greatest fear now overshadowing even the financial concerns. It's complicated, Diaz replied. Minors her age are rarely prosecuted for computer crimes unless they involve malicious intent or damage to critical systems. This was essentially a recovery of misappropriated funds within a family context. However, the method of recovery is problematic from a legal standpoint. But Dad took the money first, Zoe interjected. I just took back what was mine. Diaz smiled gently at her. The law doesn't typically recognize self-help remedies like this, even when the original action was wrong. However, he continued, turning back to me, I think we have significant leverage here. Mr. Wilson would have to explain in court why and how he liquidated his daughter's college fund for personal use, which opens him up to potential charges of financial exploitation of a minor or breach of fiduciary duty. So, you're saying James might not want to pursue this once he realizes he could be in legal trouble too? I asked hopefully. Exactly, Diaz confirmed. Additionally, if he's planning to relocate to California, as you mentioned, getting involved in prolonged legal proceedings here would complicate those plans. I suggest we prepare documentation of the original college fund, its systematic depletion, and the subsequent recovery actions. With that in hand, we can arrange a meeting to negotiate a resolution. As we left the attorney's office with a strategy in place, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since discovering James's betrayal. That hope was tested later that evening when James appeared at our door, his face contorted with rage. "Where is she?" he demanded, attempting to push past me into the house. "I want to speak to Zoe right now." "That's not happening, James," I replied firmly, blocking his entry. "If you have something to say, you can say it to me or through our attorneys." "Attorneys, really, Talia? Our daughter commits a federal crime and you're lawyering up instead of correcting her behavior." I felt a surge of protective anger. "Our daughter didn't steal from family. You did. And now you're threatening legal action because she found a way to recover what you took from her future." "She had no right to access my personal accounts," James shouted. "I could have her sent to juvenile detention for this. And I could have you investigated for financial exploitation of a minor," I countered evenly. "How do you think that would affect your professional license, your new life with Amanda, your plans to move to California?" Behind me, I heard the soft padding of Zoe's footsteps in the hallway. Before I could stop her, she appeared beside me at the door holding a thick folder. "Hi, Dad," she said with unsettling calmness. "I brought you something." She handed him the folder. "It's all the documentation of what you did. Every withdrawal from my college fund over 6 months. Every deposit into accounts you shared with Amanda. Every penny with dates and transaction IDs. James stared at the folder, his face paling as he flipped through the pages of meticulously organized financial records. "I also have screenshots of text messages between you and Amanda discussing how to use the kids' college money for your condo down payment," Zoe continued. "You really shouldn't sync your messages to the family cloud account if you're planning to betray your family." I watched my husband's expression shift from rage to shock to defeated calculation as he processed the comprehensive evidence his 12-year-old daughter had accumulated. "The way I see it, Dad," Zoe concluded with remarkable poise, "we can call this even. The money goes back to a secure college fund for me and nobody talks about how it got there. Or we can all explain our actions to the authorities and see who comes out worse." James closed the folder slowly, his shoulders sagging. "You've made your point," he said quietly. "Keep the money. I won't pursue this further." As he turned to leave, Zoe called after him. "Dad, one more thing. The program has a monitoring function. If you ever try to access that money again, or if you attempt any financial retaliation against Mom, the entire documentation package gets automatically sent to your firm's ethics committee and the state licensing board." James's back stiffened, but he didn't turn around. He walked to his car without another word, the folder clutched tightly in his hand. As we closed the door, I looked at my daughter with a mixture of amazement and concern. "Zoe, how did you become so formidable?" She shrugged suddenly, just a 12-year-old girl again. "I learned from watching both of you. From Dad, I learned about financial systems and how they can be manipulated. From you, I learned about protecting what matters." She hugged me tightly. "And what matters is us, Mom. We're going to be okay." The legal settlement came together quickly after that confrontation. James signed an agreement relinquishing all claims against us regarding the recovered funds, while we agreed not to pursue charges related to his misappropriation of the college money. The funds were secured in a new account, with strong legal protections accessible only for Zoe's educational expenses and managed by a third-party trustee until she reached adulthood. Financial matters settled, we faced the equally challenging task of emotional recovery. James and Amanda did indeed move to California, though, with significantly reduced circumstances than they had planned. According to mutual friends, they purchased a small apartment instead of the beachfront condo, and James had to start his advisory business from scratch without the substantial startup capital he had counted on. Amanda eventually returned to her husband, who remarkably agreed to attempt reconciliation. For Zoe and me, the healing process was both painful and transformative. We both attended therapy sessions individually and together to process the betrayal and its aftermath. Zoe worked through complex feelings about her father struggling to reconcile the loving dad of her early childhood with the man who had prioritized his own desires over her future. I battled shame over having been so financially naive and guilt about not recognizing the warning signs sooner. Throughout this difficult period, we discovered unexpected sources of support. My colleagues at school organized meal trains and offered babysitting assistance. Sarah and other friends checked in regularly, providing both practical help and emotional comfort. Even some of James's former friends reached out, distancing themselves from his actions and offering their support to us. Determined never again to be financially vulnerable, I enrolled in financial literacy courses at the community college. I learned about investments, tax strategies, retirement planning, and college funding options. With each new skill mastered, my confidence grew. I opened my own investment accounts, refinanced our mortgage to a better rate, and started building an emergency fund separate from Zoe's college savings. Zoe, meanwhile, channeled her technical abilities in more appropriate directions. With my encouragement and proper supervision, she enrolled in a legitimate cybersecurity program for gifted teens, sponsored by a local university. The program provided structured guidance on ethical hacking and digital security, helping her develop her talents within appropriate boundaries. Her instructors were amazed by her aptitude, suggesting she had potential for a significant career in the field. Our mother-daughter relationship evolved through this crisis, growing stronger, but also more nuanced. I had to balance my admiration for Zoe's remarkable abilities with appropriate parental guidance about ethical boundaries. We had many conversations about the difference between what is technically possible and what is morally right, discussions that helped both of us develop more sophisticated ethical frameworks. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should became a frequent refrain in our household, applying to everything from computer activities to interpersonal relationships. Despite her young age, Zoe demonstrated remarkable resilience and wisdom. "I think what Dad did taught me more than he ever intended," she reflected one evening as we shared ice cream on the porch swing. "I learned that intelligence without integrity is dangerous. He was smart about money, but made terrible choices that hurt people who loved him." I marveled at her insight. That's a powerful lesson to learn so young. "I also learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you don't," she continued thoughtfully. "But that doesn't mean you have to become bitter or stop trusting everyone. It just means you have to be discerning about who earns your trust." As the months passed, our new normal took shape. I gradually began dating again, approaching relationships with both greater caution and greater clarity about what I valued. Zoe, now 13, continued to excel academically while developing healthier peer relationships, her former tendency toward isolation diminishing as her confidence in family stability returned. The college fund that had been the center of our crisis became a symbol of our recovery. On weekends, Zoe and I would sometimes visit college campuses within driving distance, not with serious intent at her young age, but as a way of reclaiming the future that had nearly been stolen from her. Walking among historic buildings and enthusiastic students, we would discuss her evolving dreams and interests, keeping possibilities open rather than fixating on particular institutions. During one such campus visit, Zoe surprised me with a question. "Mom, do you think I did the right thing with Dad's accounts? Sometimes I wonder if I went too far." I considered my answer carefully, wanting to balance honesty with appropriate guidance. "I think you acted out of a desire for justice, which is understandable. Your methods were questionable legally, but your intention was to protect what was rightfully yours. The most important thing is that you've learned from the experience and are channeling your abilities more constructively now." She nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do with my skills eventually. I'm thinking maybe digital rights protection or financial security systems that help prevent fraud. I want to use what I'm good at to protect people, not to get even with them." On Zoe's 13th birthday, we established a new tradition. Together, we reviewed her college fund statement, now showing healthy growth under proper management, and added our annual contribution. Unlike the previous years when James had controlled this process, we now understood exactly what we were looking at and the genuine security it represented. "You know what's ironic?" Zoe mused as we completed the transaction. "If Dad hadn't tried to take the money, I might never have gotten so interested in financial security systems. Now it might be my career someday." Her observation highlighted the unexpected gifts that can emerge from painful experiences. Through the worst betrayal of our lives, my daughter had discovered her passion and potential calling. I had found strength and financial independence I never knew I possessed. Together, we had forged a bond of trust and mutual respect that no outside force could easily break. The most profound lesson I've learned from our journey is that resilience isn't about avoiding hardship, but about how we respond to it. When James betrayed us, he likely expected me to collapse in helpless despair, while Zoe became a pawn in our divorce. Instead, he underestimated both of us my capacity to rebuild from scratch and Zoe's determination to protect what was rightfully hers. Sometimes the people we trust the most can hurt us the deepest, but that betrayal doesn't define us. What defines us is how we rise from those ashes, how we reclaim our power, and how we reconstruct our lives with greater wisdom and intention than before. Have you ever had to rebuild after betrayal or been surprised by strength you didn't know you possessed? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please subscribe and hit that like button. Your support helps me continue sharing these life lessons that remind us all that our greatest challenges often reveal our greatest strengths. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes our children teach us more about resilience than we could ever teach them.